जयधारी माँ। हर जीवन अनेक प्रकार के रंगों से भरा हुआ है। बातचीत वही रंग बांटेगी आप सबके साथ। हम सब एक हैं, बस सोच अलग अलग है। बटोर लीजिए उन रंगों को, जो भी आप चाहें इस बातचीत से, और ढाल लीजिए अपनी सोच में। यही मकसद है इस बातचीत का। आइए मिलते हैं अपने प्यारे से मेहमान से। अतिथि देवो भव।
Jayadhari Ma, we welcome our audience very, very warmly. हमारी जो आज की अतिथि हैं, उनके बारे में पढ़ा, देखा, जाना। मेरा मानना है कि हम सब यूनिक हैं, and we've all been called for certain things in life. हमें अपने हाथों से कुछ करना है, सबको, सबके लिए यूनिक है। Dr. Soumya has been very, very true to her calling. Extremely true to her calling since a little child. And each experience of her life has led to more and more growth, to do what she's doing with all her heart. And she loves her country. She truly loves her country. All that she does is for our motherland. Let's see a video on her and get to talk to her. Let's see a video on her. Ji. Ma'am, very, very welcome, ma'am. We welcome you. We greet you very warmly.
Namaste. so happy to be with you and so touched by that video that you just showed.
Thank you, ma'am. Mummy, would you like to say something? Then we can start.
All I can say is I'm so very happy and privileged to connect with Dr. Soumya Swaminathan like this today, not knowing that during COVID times, we were all your students all over the world. You remember whenever you came up as the face of WHO at that time as the scientist, the chief scientist, and actually they made you the face of all the dilemmas they were in, and you were the trusted face of WHO. Whatever you said was trusted, was believed. They knew what you were saying was had no hidden agendas. And so, therefore, I'm so thrilled to see you again since my Pondicherry times. And I'm so grateful that you visited us in Puducherry at that time. And it became a turning point for us because your presence sent the shivers down the spine of many people. Because now they know that we are being watched by you, nobody else. And you went to our control room. So I'm so thrilled to meet you, Dr. Soumya, again. And we even had consultations on the phone when you guided me at that time, and we were going through a huge crisis. Thank you once again for accepting our invitation to come on the Baatcheet program and to share your legendary life, legends, a legend's daughter, and a legendary life in her own way. Thank you, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan.
Ma'am.
Thank you so much, Kiranji, because I remember being in awe of you when I was still in my, we were in Delhi doing my post-graduation, and you were the police chief at that time. And it was a inspiration actually to women. So I think you're absolutely right that having mentors and role models, especially for younger women looking up to see what other women have achieved, can be a very powerful driving force. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Ma'am, when I read about you, when I see your videos, when I hear you, ma'am, I see a life so rich with experience. And your expanse of travel is so incredible. Ma'am, I know it's too early for this question, but I want to start with this. Ma'am, share all your learnings with us about human life. You've seen life so closely with research. And I'm just going to add a thought to it, ma'am. I think you've been blessed for your calling, your communication skills, your equanimity. Grace has given it to you for your calling. Ma'am, your journey we know, with some key learnings.
Thank you for that. Very insightful, and I think what is a deep question, because when you see superficially, you have things like positions in your career, you occupy certain positions, you could become a senior leader, you have publications, you have academic credentials, you have peer recognition, which is very important in our field. For a scientist and a researcher, the most important thing is peer recognition. Your peers globally think that your work is worthwhile, and it gets published, presented, and other people start using your findings to develop their own programs. So as a scientist and a researcher, that's the kind of satisfaction that you get, that your work is of high quality and it's having some impact in your own country and globally. But let me tell you that there are other things which give you even more satisfaction sometimes, and it may not even be known to many people, but it gives you your inner satisfaction that you've done your day's job well. And I'm going back to the times when HIV/AIDS was a growing problem in India and around the world. I'm talking about the late 80s and early 90s. South India and Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh in particular, were very badly affected. Large numbers of people, our health system was not geared up. These people would get sick, obviously, over a period of time and develop some severe complications at the end, and they would require hospitalization and medical assistance. And more than anything else, it was a stigma and the rejection by society that actually was a bigger burden on them than all the physical ailments they faced. And this I came to know by interacting very closely and getting to know many patients. Many of them unfortunately died, and many of them survived. Some of the children who were born as HIV positive to parents, grew up really having a childhood that was very uncertain and unsure. And some of them today are confident young men and women who are leading healthy lives thanks to treatment. So I still remember one patient telling me, I mean, he was really on his deathbed. And I would go on my morning rounds every morning at the Tambaram Hospital, which is the biggest sanatorium, which at that time had turned into an AIDS hospital. Because most hospitals would not admit these patients. So they were all coming here. So there were literally hundreds of patients there. And this, I used to go around and say hello to all our patients and hold their hand, ask them how they're feeling, and then of course look at their medical history and decide what to do and so on. And this person, who was a few days away from dying, told me, doctor, you've done everything possible to treat me and help me, and I know that there's nothing else that you can do for me. But the fact is, you come around every morning and you hold my hand and you ask me who I am. When the whole of society is shunning me, nobody wants to come near me, because I look so terrible now, late stages. But you're holding my hand. That is enough for me. That satisfaction is enough for me. And, that always stayed with me, thinking, okay, how much power you have, how much power human touch has. And especially if you're in that position of a caregiver, that solace that you give to someone at the end of their life. And this is why I feel palliative care is so important, but so neglected. The end of life care, that everyone deserves a dignified end to life. And, that I learned that lesson. And the other thing, of course, I learned is that society can be very cruel. And a lot of it, of course, comes out of fear and stigma. Something you don't know, something that has no treatment. It's extremely scary. You don't want to get it. You want to avoid it at all costs. And therefore, you take it out on the individual and their families. And so we realize that apart from a biomedical approach, you need a group, you need lawyers to help them with legal problems, you need social scientists, social workers, you need nutritionists, you need counselors, you need people who can go home and sort out their issues. And so diseases like HIV and TB, we call them biosocial diseases because there's, as much of a social element. And finally, maybe one more point I've learned in my life is that you could be educated, you could have degrees, you could consider yourself an expert, but when you go and talk to communities or you go and talk to the affected population, the state, it could be a patient population or it could be just a community in a village or a tribal area. It makes you very humble because these people, through their own lived experience, have a much better understanding of their own reality and of what they need. And I realized that when I used to go to them and say, okay, you've got this problem and I think we've got the solution and let's do it, let's do this. And they would in turn, if you give them enough time and space and are willing to listen to them, the community members have often turned around and told me, well, you think that's our problem, but we don't. That's not our priority. Our priority is 1, 2, and 3. And why aren't you thinking about that? Why do you come with your own prefixed ideas? And so I think I learned humility. I learned that you have to listen to everyone around you before you make decisions. And the higher up you go, the more senior you become. You should never get cut off with the ground level realities. And this is why I enjoy my visits always to the field, to the villages, especially to the most remote communities, to understand what's going on there and what we as scientists, researchers, policymakers, people who have the position and the voice to speak, how can we actually help them?
Ma'am, another thought coming to my mind after hearing you. Ma'am, a lot of work that you do is also to inspire the youth of the country. You are an inspiration for youngsters to be joining the medical field in terms of research and also public health services. You are an inspiration. Ma'am, how have you looked after yourself through it all? It's very important to look after your own self physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, socially. How do young officers, young public health officials, doctors, young doctors, how do they take care of themselves through it all, ma'am? Yes, ma'am.
No, that's a good point. And I think during COVID, a lot of people did feel burnt out, especially healthcare providers. It was too much, and I remember again going back to those early HIV days when all we could do is offer some symptomatic treatment and relief. We couldn't really offer any treatments for the HIV. I also experienced that feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, and burnout at some point. And I was wondering, how am I going to carry on day after day when I hear these stories, which are so heartbreaking? And the same thing happened during COVID, because day after day after day, you healthcare providers have to look after sick patients. So I think you do need a way of being able to relieve your own anxieties and your own worries. You need someone. You need another shoulder, actually. So healthcare providers also need a shoulder that they can unburden themselves to. The other thing is you have to maintain a healthy work-life balance. And during an emergency, obviously, then you're working day and night, and you're not thinking about yourself. There's a bigger calling that you're trying to address. But that shouldn't last too long. If it goes on too long, then again, mental health is not going to be good. So I have worked very hard all my life, but I've also taken out time, for myself, for the family, for family holidays. When my children were young, I made it a point. Of course, in those days, luckily, we were not digitally connected 24/7. And so when you came home from work, you did have a break for a couple of hours before you wanted to go back and do some more work. So if you wanted to, you could take a break. And I would take them swimming. I would spend time with them, playing and talking to them, doing homework, whatever. And we always made it a point to take 1 or 2 family holidays a year where we would try and go and explore new places. That's how my children also love nature, being outdoors, because those are the kind of holidays we took in different parts of the country. But I think it's also important to be able to assess your own mental health. And when you need help, you have to be able to ask. And I was lucky. I worked in a team. We had excellent socio-behavioral scientists in our team. And very often we would talk to each other about these things. And that really helped us to cope when you share your anxieties and problems. And during COVID, I found also that having this peer group of people who were all in a very similar situation, many of us women were in Geneva alone in the sense that we were not with our families. We were working day and night, and we were worried about families back home. And yet we had this bond between us where we took turns to basically support each other. One was feeling low, the other one sort of pulled you up, and you kept going. So I think having that network of trusted friends or family members is very important.
Excellent. And you had a loving family, mommy, daddy, sisters, and even your wonderful husband.
Yes, absolutely. I've been extremely lucky to have had a family that's been so supportive, and especially my husband, because without his cooperation and without his stepping in and taking 50% or sometimes more than 50% of the household burden and childcare, I would not have been able to do everything like that.
And you spent so much of time in the international community, culturally very different. How did you get to do this bonding, the network you're talking about?
Yeah, so that's the surprising thing, that ultimately you find that you're much more alike than different. You might speak different languages, you might have different accents, and but at the WHO, of course, everyone is committed to public health. So maybe that's sort of selects for certain type of people who are there. But I found that my peers were all the senior leadership group of WHO. Somehow most of us were women, and most of us had left our families behind and come to Geneva to do this job. So I it was incredible. We had a group of women. We would go out occasionally together. Each one of us was from a different country or even a different continent, and yet never made a difference because we were all had gone through or were going through very similar experiences at work, at home, facing situations with our children, or with loneliness, or with physical health problems, or mental health problems. And we were able to share. We had that circle of trust. And that's how I think we supported each other. So I just realized the whole world is much smaller than we think. The differences are superficial. Human beings are basically the same. And there's goodness in everyone's heart.
And you would enjoy an ice cream after a very cold walk.
Yes, I cannot resist good gelato, good ice cream. And I also love walking in the mountains, and the combination is very, very tempting. Yes.
After cold walk in Switzerland or elsewhere, your friend was saying in the book that you would say, I have to have an ice cream.
And I was one of the good walkers. I used to drag them all on long walks. Some of them didn't enjoy that so much. But I think the natural beauty of Switzerland was just that it used to pull me into the outdoors whenever I could.
Ma'am, a lot of heart there. So we've made a little video for you. And that's your heart space. Because, ma'am, it's a surprise, but I can't help it but say this, that grace has flown, it's flowed to you through your parents and
Of course,
your father. A lot of key moments in your life, grace spoke to you through him. Your medical science, and you're getting a lot of key moments. That's your heart. So we want to show you your heart and then we talk about it. Yes.
Thank you. Lovely.
A lot of love there, ma'am.
You got your science, Sana. She got her science from daddy, but she got education as a teacher from mommy. So her heart space is 2 in 1: science and education, because the mother was a teacher.
And also courage of conviction from my mother.
Exactly.
She's a fighter. Yeah.
It's very well said in your book. It says, and you said it, let me quote you. You said, you can be an outlier as everybody may believe else. In the face of opposition, stick to science. Have faith in your findings and defend them. So a lot more. But you see, this is where she got it. She was blessed, both mother and father. So heart space is 2 in 1. Saina?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. And a lot of, I think, seeds of empathy were sown in very early. And ma'am, today's little program is full of surprises for you. So we have another one. We take you back to your college days. We're going to request someone very, very special to my heart to join in. And she's very dear to you too. Yes.
She's special for us as well.
Oh, wow. I'm wondering who this is.
She's been on the Baatcheet with us also, and she's a very dear friend.
Ah.
Here you are.
Yes.
Dr. Madhuri Kanitkar. There you are.
Hi. I mean, thanks to Saina and Dr. Bedi, I couldn't, I've just willed my flight to land in time and I'm on my way home. But this is such an amazing, electrifying moment to be with, 3 amazing women. And I've been hearing you as I drive. But I must say that there was the huge this thing of the head, but I think that in among all that power, what binds us all together is the heart.
Yes.
Absolutely
Correct.
well said, Madhuri. So lovely to see you. I'm glad your flight landed on time.
Yeah, I was so worried.
You can
Ma'am,
trust Madhuri. You can trust Madhuri would have gone into the cockpit and said, I have to
That's
connect.
true.
Nothing is impossible, ma'am. You have been, that
Yeah.
book and all the books I've read, and especially now, I call her my friend philosopher guide.
Mm.
ma'am, big hug to you. Ma'am, you want to tell us about? Yes.
Yes, if you permit, I'm going to tell a very interesting anecdote. Soumya and me have been in college. She was 2 years my senior, but in the 40 years, I remember four distinct moments, and I'm going to, and even Soumya doesn't know them. The first one was, I mean, you join AFMC, you're quite lost and you kind of get sorted out when you're trying to get things done. And when I'm passing out with the first MBBS, and in that awards function, I still have that photo and I've shared it with Soumya, where she was getting the second MBBS topping awards and I was getting first MBBS. And that's when I first, noted and I said, okay, this is cool. Soumya is all everything that, the first I've been hearing it, the serious part, the researcher, the scientist, but I'm going to tell the fun part of Soumya. And she was one of the most fun loving who would always laugh, have a lovely smile. She was into debating, she was into cycling. And I said, okay, this is one senior I need to get, kind of watch out and try to emulate. And and then I sailed through. So that was decade, first decade. Soumya, I must apologize. I mean, I've never, able to, and Sania and Ma'am Kiran get us to get out our heart. The
Yes.
second,
Yeah.
I'm a pediatric nephrologist today, and it was after years, it was a pediatric conference, and I saw a very svelte, very dignified, and I said, that's Soumya, but she lost weight and she was looking so very dignified, and she was standing there, and I walked. I said, aren't you Soumya? She says, yes. And we talked, and I said, look, I want to do pediatric nephrology. She said, then you're wasting your time. She marched me down to R.N. Srivastav and told me he is the father of pediatric nephrology, who has since been my friend, philosopher, guide, mentor to me. And I went into pediatric nephrology, and that was the second decade and the second point of contact. The
All
third
right.
was even more fun. It was, I landed up being dean at AFMC, and she was by then DG ICMR. But keeping all those things aside, she came down to the college and we cycled around the entire campus. Can you imagine Dean, DG ICMR with two young girls from our cycling club? Soumya, you remember that?
Yes, of course.
It was
They
such
took us
fun.
on a tour of the college. Yeah.
But
Early morning.
again, look how every meeting, like I said, was magic. And the third, this thing when I went, I'm going to continue as I walk down. The third time we cycled around and was born the multidisciplinary unit of MU at AFMC. And this was because she guided. She said, these are the funds. This is because otherwise we remain in our little cocoon. We don't know what's happening. And she said, you're there as dean and you can do it. And I said, yes. If she told me you can do and you be pediatric nephrology with this, and I did it. So I had no other this thing, but, like a good friend and colleague and a junior, I said, okay, that's what I'm doing. And we had the first multidisciplinary research unit, thanks to the guidance and the encourage, and we really set it up and got the first patent. And today that same unit is doing extremely well, progressed into a center where they have computational science and they have math, AI, and they're doing lots of great, good work with epigenetics and what have you. So that was decade number 3. But I must tell you, it didn't end there. There was a decade 4 and stolen moments when I was in Chennai, and I called up and she was there and just walked across, and we had a lovely dinner together. And since then, we are working on something which is phenomenal to try and be a disruptive change in the university with a center of excellence. And I mean, I keep brainstorming with her and looking forward to that. So that's 4 decades, 4 turning points.
Yes, lovely memories, Madhuri.
Absolutely.
Madhuri, you were on the third level. Why don't you name it in her name? Because she gave you the idea, and you do develop it. Name it in her name.
Brilliant
Re-christen
idea.
it.
Yes.
Re-christen. Yeah.
I have to get back, because in any case, Soumya's name is there in our Hall of Fame at AFMC. I think we need to get her here. And since AFMC still comes under me as a Vice Chancellor, I think the two of us should go there and get AFMC to do something fun like
And
that.
you say
game
it's
for that?
not. Let's do that. Name it in her. Because this is what we need to do, perpetuate legacy like this. Who gave you the idea? Who's the mother of the idea?
You. and Soumya, let me tell you, I mean, you know, you've brought out that lovely book I've read of yours, but when I met, she said, you have to write a book. And I said, I've got too many things happening and I can't. And then she turns around and tells Rajiv, General, you can write. And Rajiv's actually written a book, and it's going in for publication in December. And once it's done, we are going to have her, you know, launch it.
No, Soumya should launch it. We will all get together.
Both.
Soumya should be there to launch it.
Yes.
I'm going to have both.
No, that was such a good idea that Rajiv and she are doing this together. Wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, Madhuri is somebody who can get things done. I mean, I think so. Of course, she's underplayed herself, but I think we all know that she's turned the university around and made it such a dynamic and thriving place for ideas and innovation. Most universities are.
We were very lucky to have both of them come to the university for the Silver Jubilee. And it was a beautiful moment where, you know, thousands of students in the auditorium. It was Madam's birthday, and we celebrated it together with the Silver Jubilee of the college, of the university. So it was a beautiful, very, very memorable, absolutely. But it's been lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me to join. I mean, I could hear the whole thing from the background and pop in and add my 2 bit of fun.
Ma'am, it's all your care. You care so much. And ma'am, AFMC, the hospital, is a very, very blessed. It's caring. It's giving so much of deep care, ma'am. And thanks to you, I could visit. And the children are being looked after so beautifully there, ma'am. So beautifully.
I must think Saina has done something amazing. She's brought the thing of fun and frolic with the thing of clowning and storytelling activity for children in the pediatric ward. And I could just facilitate it, you know, through the Ami Commander's wife, as well as getting people at the command hospital. Especially, you know, we have the Onco ward in pediatrics.
Yes.
So all the children got together and they had a wonderful session there.
Ma'am, with Ma's grace, there's more coming up. So I'll connect with you about that, ma'am. But it's such they're being really looked after. And the children are happy. The children are happy there, ma'am. The pain is there, but they're getting the strength to take it on.
So that's why, you know, why I said the common electrifying thing in this room of 4 women is the heart.
Yes. But to total love. It's selfless love. It's heart.
Exactly.
It's selfless love. It's giving love all the time, giving and giving. And being outdoor and visible. You see, you're visibly giving. See, what I've seen a similarity, I saw you, Madhuri, in your university, and I see this in Soumya. And this is what I've done in my own life, is the visibility and giving love, care, giving, and then there was the softness of heart.
Yes.
So much of softness. I think that's the...
The point you made in Chennai in that meeting about I mean, whether it's leadership or management, no one asks you to do it. It comes from within. I think that is what I remember and took back from that. That it comes from within. So if it's there, it's there, and that's what you showed us.
It's your choice. You choose to do this. You choose. Nobody tells you. You choose. You choose to love. Nobody tells you love. You choose to love because love is flowing out of your heart.
Yes.
And it's unconditional, right? Yeah, you're not expecting things in return. I think that's
that is what makes it so wonderful. That is why you were so trusted when you were speaking up during COVID times in WHO. Nobody could doubt what you were saying, and you were at very critical times when you were speaking up for WHO in COVID times. Very critical, but everybody glued to the television to listen and believe you because there was a trust which you had earned for yourself.
Yes.
That's a very valuable thing. It's very, very difficult to earn that and very easy to lose credibility as well. So that's a very valuable thing.
Working in India, Soumya had a double tightrope because there she was representing, bringing in science, evidence from the world, and yet because India was sort of being targeted in that our public health and we are going to have major problems. But there she was representing and putting things in the correct perspective. And I think we did well. And another small thing, we had started something called the AFMC Alumni Town Hall. And believe you me, in all her busy schedule, she attended most of this, bringing us facts and figures well ahead of waiting for them to be published, telling us I think those were again big learning events for where we all collectively got together.
Yes. Let me share with you, Dr. Soumya, what you said in your book. This is page 83 of your book. You said, in an emergency, we don't have the luxury to wait for years to collect the evidence we need, but must nonetheless justify global recommendations and adapt policies based on latest data and emerging evidence. This is the dynamism.
That's one of the most difficult things for us because we had to tell people what to do. Everyone was waiting to hear from us.
Yes.
And when you're not 100% sure, you still have to make that leap of faith based on the best available data. But then again, have that humility to say, now we know better, we're changing this.
Yes.
And we'd rather do it this way. So we had to adapt a lot of our own methodology in WHO and become much more nimble and flexible than WHO is used to being.
Yes.
Because of the accelerated, timeline for everything.
Ji, ma'am, you would like to आप रुकेंगे कि अभी ma'am, Madhuri ma'am?
Yes, Saina.
You would like to go first with us, ma'am?
Yeah, I thought I just sort of entered the house, and thank you so much for inviting me. And it's been wonderful to meet both of you and Soumya. I mean, all three together in one evening. Wonder I had to tell the pilot, make me in time.
You did.
Mama, Dhari, always bless your smile. ऐसे ही रेडियंस के साथ आप स्माइल हमेशा करते रहे, and a lot of regard to sir.
Yes, thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Pranam to you, ma'am. Ma'am.
Yeah.
Book.
You've got the book.
Yes, we've been reading. It's
lovely.
This was Anuradha insisted on writing it. I was telling her, क्या लिखना है? What is there that's so interesting? कुछ भी नहीं है, nothing dramatic. ना तो मैं कोई बड़े secrets बताने वाली हूँ. If you think I'm going to, give you a lot of behind the scenes secrets, ऐसा भी कुछ नहीं है. So then she said, नहीं, just need to write about your life because it's interesting for a lot of people. I was not convinced, but she went ahead anyway.
I'm so glad she did.
We'll call her to talk to you. That's another surprise. That's another surprise.
Here's Anuradha.
Hey. Hello, Anuradha.
Hi, My God, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm really getting goosebumps because, it's so great to be over here with Kiran Baby Ma'am, with Dr. Soumya, and I think I just saw Dr. Madhuri Kanshal leave, and of course, Saina. Thank you so much for this. I
There's
mean,
your
you
book.
people
And I was
inspire
telling them,
us.
I was telling
Continue
them
to
that you
inspire
insisted
us.
on doing it.
Of course, it was a given. In fact, I'm insisting that man writes Soumya 2.0 because it's still abhi picture baki
ओ,
hai.
बहुत
It's not
जबरदस्त
over.
है, बहुत जबरदस्त है. असली रिसर्च तो अब आनी है, ग्राउंड की रिसर्च, एनजीओ पॉलिसीज की.
Yes. But thank you, ma'am.
And
Thank you
that's
for inviting
required.
me.
And that's plenty to required because there's a whole NGO movement in this country. How does NGO move the government for policy changes?
Right.
And what research, social science research, which goes into it? Because most of the NGOs are not involved in research. We are all into execution, and then move from one project to the other. But lots of lessons which can be documented. I think that's where Dr. Swaminathan could play a vital role with her flourishing Pondicherry experiments and elsewhere.
Right. That's true.
Absolutely.
That's true. But yes, I feel very privileged to be among all of your people, and one of the most memorable.
It's a beautiful it's a beautiful book.
It's
And
on her, so it has to be only good. No.
No, tell
and
us your experience about the book. How did you
you
get
know
it? How did you have sessions with her? How did you get all this
Oh my
information?
God. We had to actually, ma'am was not willing, huh? We had to actually make WhatsApp calls, and she was I think she was leaving WHO at that point of time. And she says, no, what is it about? I said, no, ma'am, please, one call. And then, as a journalist, since we are associated, we know about her work. Like as a young journalist, she was DJ ICMR when she would come to Pune, and she would visit Nari, and she would visit Beach Pericle. And at that time also she was so passionate about TB and nutrition and how malnutrition has to be addressed, and all these things which I've been saying, these things stay with us. And then she's a woman, she's a scientist, she's a doctor, and she's leading teams in the public health space. I
Yes.
think so. When the publisher did come and reach out to me, he says, at the fag end of COVID, he says, let's do something on COVID. I don't know, somewhere naturally Dr. Swaminathan's name came to my head. I mean, like, why not? I mean, there's such a lot written about it, but not a book. I mean, this was my first attempt, and I said, let me just give it a shot. Let me take it up as a project. And I just decided, and then, of course, continue to be inspired with people like y'all and how y'all are so driven to do it. I guess I was driven to do it. I don't know why. But, COVID had that kind of impact on everybody, I think, because it was a learning for all of us. And yes, and I think Dr. Swaminathan, the way she presented and the way she spoke, and there were a lot of back and forth on the solidarity trial, on this and that, and there was a lot of acerbic talk as well. But given the fact that she's done so much on her own, I mean, of course, she's
Yes.
a legendary father and she's got the mother. I wish I'd met her. But Dr. Swaminathan per se on her HIV days, and then, when she actually agreed, she actually gave me access to her family, her friends, and I got a different picture when I spoke to them about her. So that was very interesting. And yeah, so
So
we
what were
just
you
have
recording? Were you interviewing and recording, voice recording? What were you doing?
yeah, so Dr. Swaminathan likes to walk a lot. So
Uh-huh.
I think I would catch her and I said, ma'am, what is the correct time? Okay, on a Saturday night. And because we had the difference, the time zone. So it's like 4.5 hours, and she was in Geneva. And I said, okay, ma'am, then, and I would wait at 10 o'clock in the night at Saturday. I said, Arey, ma'am, kabhi hai, kaha hai, kaha hai? And then she said, okay, Arey, Radha, okay, after another. But she was committed. When she gave a word, she gave a word. So even if it was at that late hour, she says, is it okay? I said, yes. I would sit, I'd put a voice recorder on, and then it transcribes. So yeah,
Wonderfully done. Very good, despite being long distance.
but the best part of it, the most memorable part of it, was going to Chennai and meeting Dr. Swaminathan. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that was like history. I was, I mean, we know about the gradient distress, we know about, but sitting over there, and ma'am was there, Dr. Swaminathan was there. I think that was the most memorable moment of the book. I mean, at least for me.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for getting her, Saina. Thank you, your team, for bringing the author, Anuradha, in the group. Thank
No,
you.
absolutely. It's all
Thank
blessed.
you so much. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I'm still getting goosebumps.
And I think all the youngsters must read this book who want to join public health services, because the book
Yes.
talks to you. You know, the book talks to you. Ma'am, Anuradha, please stay with us. We request
Yes.
you to please stay with us. Yeah. Ma'am, something wonderful which comes out of this uh, book is also the importance of primary health care.
Hmm.
Very, very, it's so evident from here that a nation is known by its primary health care.
Yes.
Ma'am, and also being prepared,
Hmm.
prepared for emergencies. How does a nation do that, ma'am?
It takes long-term investment to do that, Saina. And what we saw during the pandemic was panic. All countries were panicking because there were shortages of everything, shortages of oxygen, shortages of supplies, shortages of PPE, scramble, countries competing against each other. India was relatively lucky because we have such good capacity in our own country that we could very quickly ramp up the manufacturing of diagnostics and PPE and all the essential items. We struggled a bit for oxygen, but we managed to get over that. And of course, vaccines also, we were completely self-sufficient. In fact, we were sending to other countries. But many countries were not like that, and they were really dependent. And it was very sad to see, many African countries waiting for a long time for things to arrive in their at their shores. So primary health care is critical. And the other thing I observed as being in WHO and being able to see the data is countries that had invested more in primary health care and public health, they actually did a much better job compared to even very high income countries that have fancy hospitals and ICUs and still had a very high mortality rate because they could not deliver those basic essential public health services that you need. And India managed to do it relatively well, but it was at the cost of other programs. Our TB program suffered, our immunization program suffered, our maternal and child health programs suffered. And again, this was not unique to India, it was across many countries. So you have to build in resilience into the health system. You have to have well-trained manpower, of course, infrastructure, your supply chains, your data flows. You need a good health information system that you can get your data from on a real-time basis. And in an emergency, and I think we're going to be facing more emergencies in the future because of climate change, may not necessarily be another pandemic, but things are uncertain today. We will have natural disasters. We don't know when we'll have the next biological disaster, but we have to be prepared. And that's why I strongly believe that we need to make those sustained investments, not just in buildings and infrastructure, but also in capacity, in ongoing mentoring and training. I've been going around India and I visit villages, I go to the primary health center, I speak to the doctors there, go to health and wellness centers, I speak to the CHOs there. There's a new cadre called the community health officers now, Ashas, Anganwadi workers. We are at the front line of delivering services, and we expect a lot from them. And largely they perform well. Ashas I've been very inspired with, very motivated women, most of them in the villages. But they do need mentorship. They do need some recognition. They themselves need some unburdening and some support to themselves and their families. So I think taking care of those, and of course, in also increasing the financial public health needs more investment in India because we have very good private, we have a whole range of private medical services, from the very good to the very poor. We have everything. And during COVID, again, we saw the extremes. We saw selfless service by many NGO and private hospitals. We also saw extortion and money making and exploiting people in many private hospitals. So it's complex. The population is large. We have a complex private and public health system. The government has responsibility for ensuring standards are maintained. Doesn't matter if it's public or private. Some basic health standards and clinical care standards have to be maintained. Those must be enforced. And for that, we need legislation, but also regulatory bodies that are capable of enforcing those. And I think Dr. Kiran Bedi knows very well it's not enough to have the rules, we've got to enforce them. And so I think whether it's pharmacies not selling over the counter antibiotics, or whether it's hospitals not overcharging patients, or whether it's public centers, like primary health centers, delivering quality care. Just because you have someone sitting there as a health provider doesn't mean they're doing quality care. So I think the focus on quality, not just quantity, is going to be important. And we have to measure the health outcomes. Ultimately, if your health services are good, your outcomes will be better. Also, I think we have to focus more on prevention. When we think about healthcare, we only think about setting up health centers. We need to think about clean air, clean water, sanitation, housing, and a nutritious diet as being determinants of health. You can have the best hospitals, but if you're living with pollution around you, you're going to be in poor health. So I think a lot more focus there on the upstream, what we call determinants of health, where the health ministry may not be the one in charge, but has to ensure that other ministries are doing their job. And also investment in those areas is going to be important.
You said it so beautifully in your book. You said, I've read your book through and through now. I've enjoyed reading the book and learned so much. You said, in a question when you were asked, how does one ensure equity in policy and programming? You said, it is pertinent to think of the last mile as the first mile. This is something unbelievable what you said. Think of the last mile as the first mile, which means the bottom line is immediately addressed before you start building up, rather than you building up and then thinking of, oh, what about the last mile? And that gets ignored. It's a last mile connectivity. I think you said it beautifully, that it's pertinent to think of the last mile as the first mile. And last mile is preventive health. And that last mile is at the doorstep of everybody, every village, every urban area. That's the last mile. So when we build a hospital or a medical college or a facility, look at the last mile. Who's the beneficiary? How are we going to reach out to? In what forms? What resources required? Once you start building up, the rest starts taking care of. And the pressure on the structure reduces. The big structure which you created reduces because the last mile is being taken care of.
Exactly. And I remember as LG of Puducherry, you used to go and do the inspections because, vector control means that you have to go into each gully to see कि पानी कहाँ पर accumulate हो रहा है, वहाँ पे कहाँ पे मच्छर breed हो रहे हैं, कहाँ पे sanitation ठीक नहीं है. तो आप जाते थे as LG, you used to go and see. I think that's what it means. You need to go into that detail and see कि वहाँ पे क्या problem है implementation में. Then, as you said, things will fall into place. But we often overlook that, and we make very nice policies. But वो कहीं ना कहीं वो, it's not practically implemented.
बिल्कुल.
Ma'am, how do you bridge the gap? How do you talk to community when you go for your rounds? Because sometimes I've noticed, even when I'm interacting with the community, I have a thought in my mind that I'll talk about this big concept. And when I reach there, I land up realizing that keep the concept to yourself, Saina. Don't talk about any concepts here. Just talk about basic day-to-day life.
Yes.
And sometimes for health, all that I tell them, you've got water? Yes. Drink water, bathe properly, wash your hands. That's all I talk about health, and I come back because there's nothing more one can do. One is so helpless at that point of time. What do you do, ma'am? Because we have a vision. There's so much we want to do. But there's a world out there that needs a different connect. It's so different from the world, ma'am. How do you feel? What happens, ma'am?
No, that's why I feel that bringing those stories, um, and because those fisherwomen and farmers that I meet when I go out into the thing, I mean, they have such hard lives. I feel so fortunate that we are able to live a comfortable life, and those people have a day-to-day struggle for their livelihood, and for women in particular, the drudgery in rural areas is still huge. It's still huge, the drudgery. So in different ways, the fisherwomen, they wake up at 2 in the morning and they have to take their fish load and go into the market. So they're there in the town at 4 in the morning to sell their fish, and so on. You could go on and on and. So I asked them, what is it that you need? Same thing. Do you have the basics? Do you have protective equipment? Have you had your shots? Have you had your BP and sugar checked? Have you had your children immunized? What about your source of fuel? What do you use for cooking? One of the encounters I'll always remember is salt pan workers. Again, in southern Tamil Nadu, you have a lot of salt pan workers. And I went to a salt pan village and I went with these women. They don't even have a toilet because they work in this open salt pan. There's no shelter, no tree, nothing there, no shade. I said, how do you manage the whole day? And they said, we don't eat or drink anything because we know that we can't go to the toilet. So they get up at 4 in the morning and have something, a cup of tea, and go to work. They come back at 3, then cook a meal and eat. And as a result, they age prematurely, they have urinary infections and things like that. I hadn't even thought about those issues. And I wrote an article for a newspaper which was titled Rubbing Salt into Their Wounds. So many people wrote to me after that saying, Namak to hum, day in and day out namak istemal karte hain. We never knew कि जो नमक बनाते हैं हमारे लिए उनका इतना कठिन है अपनी जिंदगी में इतनी कठिनाई है. So many of these kind of occupational things are there actually, Saina, in our country that you don't even realize. So I think just bringing to light some of those stories, sometimes you just have to throw light in the darkness and then somebody starts acting on it.
Ma'am, I could also... Ji, ma'am.
In fact, since now you are into your daddy's shoes, you're in your papa's shoes, you're the chairperson of the foundation he created. And for all that, he got the Ramon Magsaysay Award. He and I shared the same award. He got it much earlier and I did later. But I think now your role as an NGO, I think would be now very vital to develop workable models that can be scaled. That's how I now am looking up to you. What kind of models you offer to be upscaled in the fields you are working? I think that's now the contribution the nation can benefit from. Soumya?
I agree. As an NGO, we can demonstrate models, take new concepts, new ideas, try some innovations, document whether it's a success or not, and then take it to state governments or central government. And hopefully then if it's something good, it gets scaled. And that's how my father, when he set up the foundation, that was the whole idea: use science, technology to solve societal problems and bridge traditional knowledge and modern scientific knowledge to co-create solutions with the community, whether it's farmers or tribal populations, whatever. So that would certainly be my endeavor. I don't think that I can be in my father's shoes. I don't think anyone can. He was very unique, but certainly will do my best with my excellent team, of course, of very, very committed people that we have at the foundation, that we're trying to solve these problems, particularly agrarian problems, but not just those, and now also much more linked to climate change and its health impacts.
Can you consider maybe doing some workshops in training some NGOs in this kind of research, which could offer as models? These are very good practices, but they would not know how to do it. So could you do this? Could you consider doing a workshop? I would love to send some of my NGO leadership to come and attend your workshop and learn, because we have lots of models. The foundation like the Navjyoti India Foundation, which is working on underprivileged, or the prisoners' children we're working on. We could send, if you can hold a little workshop and bring in scientific evidence or research which cannot be ignored, and coming from you with your credibility and expertise, I think that it will not be ignorable. That's what we could now think of.
That's a wonderful idea. It's a wonderful idea, Kiranji. Thank you for that. And I think if more NGOs started actually, demonstrating this impact
Yes.
in proper scientific evidence,
Yes.
then their work could also get multiplied and have a much bigger impact. So I think that's a fantastic idea. I'll certainly think about it and organize it, and we'll be in touch.
That will be great. I'm so grateful to you, Soumya. Yes, Saina, we crossed the time. We let her go.
Ma'am,
Otherwise, we can go on with her.
ma'am, any thoughts crossing your mind at this point? Anything you'd like to say before we close
No,
the
just
program?
that it's been a lovely conversation and it's been very stimulating as well. Hearing from yourself, Kiranji, and also the lovely surprise guests that you brought. Both Anuradha and Madhuri are good friends, but also people who've done things in their own right that they can be proud of. So thank you so much for this conversation. I didn't even notice the 1 hour passing.
Ma'am,
Yes.
a small message for young practitioners who want to enter the field of research.
Young scientists.
Who want to enter the world of research, ma'am. It's such
That's right.
research is a backbone. We can't move forward without research.
Absolutely. So I think that's the message, that research is the backbone. We need many more young people in India getting interested and involved in research. You can do it anywhere you are. Even in a primary health center, if you have the interest, you can start documenting things you see every day. That is research. And over a period of time, you look at it and then you start asking questions. Why this? Why that? That becomes your research question. And then you can develop, and there are lots of online resources now, lots of people who are willing to help. So it doesn't matter where you are. I think that curiosity that is innate in all of us, use it, because through research, we can improve the way we do things. And of course, then our patients ultimately get to benefit.
Super.
Wonderful, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for all that you've given us.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Given our nation. Thank you for what you've given. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be in touch. Thanks a lot.
Yes. Thank you.
Jai Dhari, Mama. Jai Dhari. We thank our audience. Jai Dhari, Ma. Thank you.